Fear Not, Episode 46. Hi, I'm Billy Atwell, and I believe that consistently facing your fears is the only way to realize your truest self and to make those confident choices that will help you to obtain your deepest held hopes and dreams. I have faith that this podcast series will show you that you are not alone, that it will strengthen you and give you courage to face your fears, and that it will help you to permanently cross over into a life of living beyond your fears. Join me on this journey as we listen and learn from others as they share their experiences in facing and overcoming their own fears. Hello, everybody. Today you and I are going to be joined by Richard Haight. Hey, Richard, how are you today?
Oh, fantastic, Billy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, the pleasure's all mine. Are you ready to fear not today?
I'm ready.
Richard began his path of awakening at age 8 when he made a solemn promise and a vision to dedicate his life to enlightenment and to share what he found with the world. He's an instructor of meditation, healing, martial arts, and is the author of The Unbound Soul, a spiritual memoir for personal transformation and enlightenment. Through his new book, The Unbound Soul, his meditation and martial arts seminars, Richard is helping to ignite a worldwide spiritual awakening that is free from all constraints and open to anyone of any level. He believes true spiritual enlightenment embraces all of life with deep aliveness, authenticity, and authority. It is what you are truly seeking. Richard, can you take a few minutes to fill in the gaps and maybe give us a brief glimpse of your personal life as well?
Oh, sure. As you mentioned in the intro, my whole process started with a vision when I was very young. What I didn't understand at that time was that the spiritual awakening process or enlightenment process really is all about dealing with fear. It's not. There are some, perceived woo-woo aspects of it, but really, meditation and other tools. But really, what we're doing is actively embracing the process of going through fears. And so, it's an honor to be on your show because that's what you're really focused on. So, in that sense, what you're doing is a true service, in my opinion, a true service to humankind.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, yeah.
Richard, would you share with us one of the biggest fears that you've had to face?
Yes, actually, when I was young, so I had this vision, and I didn't understand, where to start, what to do. There was just no. I was given a direction in my life, but I wasn't shown how to take the steps. So I just had no place to start. And in this process of, as I was getting older, feeling the kind of the weight of what my mind was telling me that I had to do, even though I had no clue what it was, that mental noise, that fear started to build up inside. Well, what if I can't live up to the expectations of this vision? It's a strange concept, but once that process of self-judgment begins, it just sort of steamrolls, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you become very self-critical, and you can't be natural in the moment. And really, that is a big portion of what fear is for people, is their own mental noise and judgments against whatever it is they're doing in the moment.
So what did you do to overcome that fear?
Well, it started on one day when I was 16. I became suicidal. I just didn't feel I had anything to offer. I didn't know where to begin, where to end with my life. I was very different from other children, and I didn't like myself at all. I was very fearful internally. Externally, I might do stuff that looked really courageous. I would put myself at extreme physical risks because I didn't love myself. It was okay if I died, right? But it was to create an image that other people could look at and see as cool. And so the real fear, of course, was the unseen fear was what I was concerned about, how other people thought of me, right? So a lot of us in our lives are going through, and we have these same fears, concerns really most about what other people are thinking about us. We're not necessarily observing the fact that we ourselves are run by fears. We may have external activities that make us look courageous. We may take challenges. We may hike Everest, but at the root of it, it is fear. Our friends want to go with us, so they talk us into to hiking Everest, even though someplace inside, maybe that wasn't really what we wanted to do. We just wanted to look like we were facing our fears. So, at a fundamental level, we could appear to be challenging and facing our fears when in actuality, the whole process is stemmed from a fear of judgment, both within our own judgment and other people's view of us, right? And so the compass needle really has to be one's true passions, one's true inspiration in life. Without that compass guiding, then our lives get derailed by this other people's opinions, expectations for what our life should be, right?
So, what do you do when you are confronted with that? Because that is a very, like you said, a lot of people have this fear. So, what do you do to face living up to other people's expectations or selling yourself out for approval of other people, if you would?
Well, in a way, it was kind of a cheat for me. So when I was 16, I had this vision, or I had this, life or death, suicidal state, and I remember very clearly that once I had decided that I was going to kill myself, once I had it all prepared, and I knew I was going to be leaving in the next few moments, my past just evaporated. I mean, I didn't have anything to worry about the past because it's going to be over. And I no longer had any concern for the future because it also doesn't mean anything anymore. I no longer cared about anybody's opinions because they didn't matter anymore. I was going to be dead. My own opinion also ceased to matter. And in that moment, there was this great pressure release, a sudden relaxation into the moment, and a profound kind of presence was there, an aliveness. And a feeling of inspiration came through. My eyes were drawn up to look at the sun rays as they come through the glass, of my bedroom window, and I could see the little particles of dust intersecting with those sun rays, and little sparkles of light were coming off. They looked like little angels. It was really amazing. And of course, I'd been in my room many times. I'd never seen that before. And then my body became kind of wide and expansive, and a voice came through, and it actually guided me in my life at that time. It was a very strange thing in retrospect, but it said, or you could, instead of killing yourself, you could do what you really want to do in your life. Find your passions and find friends who have passions that you admire and who are pursuing those passions with integrity. Your current friends they don't really care about you. They don't even necessarily care about themselves. They're just caught up in what it is that they're doing and want someone to be there with them. So that was the process, but the realization from it is that it's kind of like, the old saying, you're turning a battleship. It takes a long time. And so we do need something every day to be able to reroute back into that, what I just described as that presence. And so in my case, I use meditation, and I also use curiosity. So the best vehicle that we could possibly have for this overcoming our fears and spiritual awakening is our own body, our own physical experiences, our own internal processes, and just being really curious about it, almost in a third-person point of view. What we tend to do is own our fears. That's an actual term. You need to own your fears. But the reality is fear is not personal. Everybody has had that fear of other people's judgments and opinions of us. Fear is just fear. It's not your fear. It's not my fear. It just is fear. And it may or may not be there. It's not an ultimate truth. We could fear something that is completely not legitimate to fear. Or we could not fear something which is very legitimate to fear. For example, jumping out of planes. Some people don't feel fear when they do that, but legitimately that could be a dangerous activity, and fear might be a legitimate voice at that time. So fear is not really an actual truth, shall we say. But when we become curious about it, almost from a third-person perspective, as if we were exploring what fear is, it starts to become more transparent, for lack of a better term. We start to see it for what it is, and then it becomes easy at that point, so long as we have that compass needle that is directing us towards inspiration and passion, where we could just simply ask the question, does this fear have any benefit towards me achieving my goals, what it is, the passion that wants to come through? And if it doesn't, then you just decide you have a choice at that moment, either to pursue your goals and knowing that there's going to be that sense of fear or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that curiosity, and also I do daily meditation. I have a meditation that I've discovered through my life process that is very applicable to daily life. I call it an observation meditation, but it is a non-form, very, very natural form of meditation that translates very well into just daily life. And through that process, the sense of the sense of self as a prison begins to dissipate, as compulsions, as urges, as avoidances, and that sort of thing. The fears that really are driving much of the activity of self starts to dissipate. I can't say that there's not there, because being honest, there was nervousness, some trepidation before this interview with you. The important point is that fear does not actually impact my life in terms of what I do. I realize it's there. I just make choices that are not guided by that voice.
How much of your philosophy and your spirituality and the way that you approach fear is based on your time from living in Japan? Because I know that you told me you lived there for about 15 years, which I'm super jealous, by the way. Oh, I had 2 weeks in Kyoto, and it changed my life. So I was just
Oh,
curious.
yes.
I can only imagine if I came back after 2 weeks a changed person, what 15 years would do. So has that played a big part in how you face life and fear?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely huge. I mean, there's several aspects of it. One is just stepping out of your familiar environment and seeing a completely different approach to life. That in itself makes you start to question your own perceptions and your own biases, right? And so that can be an opening for anybody to start having that potential opening for addressing weaknesses and assumptions, perceptions, and biases. Fear has a lot to do with that. So, in my case, I was there to study martial arts. I was there studying samurai arts, jujitsu, kenjutsu. It's a sword training, and so that was my immersion. And every day was dealing with discomfort and fear because the instructor is not coming at you in a nice, easy way. He's not letting you just do things. You have to fear. You have to face that pressure, that intensity, and the only way that one can get through that is to just simply accept that one is going to be uncomfortable and that that's okay. Most of the students that went there, they would drop out after 6 months because the instructor would ask you to do things that seem physically impossible. But if you just don't feed that entity of fear, and you're patient with the process, it starts to happen. And so that is very transformative. It's that persistence. It's not a willpower thing. It's not, there's not this internal struggle and it's forcefulness. It's just persistence, recognizing that the fear is going to be there. Okay, but I'm going to do it anyway. There's no point in fighting with that fear. There's no point in making a counter argument. That just wastes more energy, right? Instead, you just say, well, I'm going to do it anyway. Okay, I hear you, but I'm going to do it anyway. That kind of thing. Yeah. So it's just like a baby learning to walk. The baby doesn't say to itself, darn it, I'm going to learn how to walk. I'm going to get up again. It's more instinctive. It just does it.
You've clearly been on this path actively for a long time. You must have come across some really great resources and materials that have inspired you. Would you mind sharing a few with us, perhaps?
Actually, incidentally, it would be the opposite of what you would think. When I was young, I had a reading disorder. So I didn't start this process out by reading what other people had to say. There was no internet, so I couldn't get on and listen to Fear Not, which would have probably been a fantastic resource at the time. So I just started, I really had to follow my own path. And what I ended up doing, of course, is just discovering a path and a way of teaching other people to overcome their fears. And that ultimately culminated into my own book, which is The Unbound Soul. But it's more directed towards people that are interested in the spiritual enlightenment process than individuals who just want to overcome fear for optimization in their life. Although those two are not mutually exclusive. There's a couple of books that I have read afterwards that certainly help for the spirituality process, and becoming aware of fear and other issues almost from a third person perspective. So many of your audience might be familiar with Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now. That was one that I did read as a retrospect book that that I could see could be beneficial for people that were interested in the spirituality perspective. Then, if people are interested in martial arts, best thing you could do is go find a good jujitsu instructor, because they're going to put you in uncomfortable situations. But the best resource you could possibly have that nothing can beat is your own life experience and the attitude you make in the moment towards your own life experience, the internal noise. There's just nothing that can beat that.
Are you ready for the speed round?
Sure.
What person that's either fiction or real has made the most impact on your life?
My martial arts instructor in Japan, Osaki Shizen. He always supported my exploration process, and that's not very common. Usually, you're stuck doing whatever the program is. But as we worked together, we developed a relationship, and he developed a trust for my own process, and then just started supporting it and letting me explore. And that ultimately has resulted in such tremendous fruit and such a blessing. So I'd like to thank him.
If you could instantly change one thing in the world, what would that be?
Well, I probably actually wouldn't make a change because I believe my own experience has been that the life process itself is the perfect teacher so long as we choose the right attitude towards it in the moment. But I would be tempted at least to slightly turn up the volume on introspection and curiosity within the human beings of the planet towards what's really going on within themselves in the moment of their life, because that really is the core of the awakening process.
What's your biggest weakness?
Actually, physically, generally speaking, I have a very fast metabolism. And so what the effect is that I run out of energy pretty quick, like a greyhound. And of course, that affects mentally as well. When you get physically exhausted, you are mentally exhausted. So that's always been a challenge for me, because that does affect everything in life. And when you get mentally exhausted, you become irritable. So
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, yes. Yeah, you know what I mean. I'm still working on that one.
What's your biggest strength?
Yeah, persistence. Persistence, not willpower, because willpower draws too much energy. And so I started to, as a way to deal with this lack of energy, I found that just this constant persistence without fighting, I'm going to do that, and then just keep pecking away at it. Even if you have to take a break from now and again, you just keep pecking away at it. That is an incredible, but it sounds so simple, but it's probably one of the most transformative things that you could do in your life, is to just start embracing that the persistence model versus the willpower model.
If you could only have one book to read, what book would that be?
That's an excellent question. Again, as I said, I started with a learning disorder, so I had never really embraced books much, which sounds strange considering I just authored a book. I would probably, strangely enough, I would probably read the Bible, because there's within the Bible, there are so many, it's all from different authors, but there are so many just odd and different stories that you would never, if I was stuck on an island, you'd never run out of just interesting things to read. And there's some incredible sparks of insight in there that, when you're ready, you read it and it's just like, wow, I think that would probably be a good choice.
Do you have a favorite sound?
Yes, my wife's voice, no doubt. It's when I hear her voice, it's just like a big hug. It's fantastic. Yeah.
Richard, if someone wants to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, there are two options. One is my website. I offer a audio course, a free audio series on taking spiritual authority in your daily life, which I'd like to offer to the Fear Not listeners. I think you might find that as a great resource. And the other one is The Unbound Soul. It's a spiritual memoir for personal transformation and enlightenment. It's all about dealing with whatever blockages are in your life and preventing from the awakening process. So that might be something that would suit a lot of your listeners.
What parting advice would you like to leave with us today?
Play with persistence and play with curiosity. We have a tendency to again become very willful and make things very, very serious. But when we just kind of switch that attitude towards a little bit more playfulness, it creates a lot of openings. And it also enables other people to then enjoy life a little bit more and to play and to look at themselves in a lighter lighter way that allows for insight into what's really going on inside the human being. So play is a great one.
And just so that everybody knows, Richard has also donated a copy of his book, The Unbound Soul, to be given away. So if you would like an opportunity to win, visit the giveaways page at livingbeyondyourfears.com to submit your free entry form today. Richard, I really want to thank you so much for coming on the show. I was looking forward to it, and it just was really great talking to you.
Thank you for having me, Billy. If it's possible, would it be okay if I requested something from the audience?
Go right ahead.
Well, so The Unbound Soul is a self-published book, and I'd like to get it into bookstores. If you're interested, and if you happen to be someone who frequents bookstores, if you could ask your bookstore to order it for you, that might get them inspired to start to stock that book, which would be very, very helpful to get the message out.
Thank you for joining me today. And remember, you cannot achieve everything, but you do have the God-given ability to achieve anything. So stay focused, out of fear, and keep on keeping on. Until next time, be well and peaceful. For more information on today's episode and guest, or for resources that will assist you in overcoming your fears, visit livingbeyondyourfears.com. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, where 3 times a week we move to a life beyond our fears.